Welcome, pilgrims, dragons, skeletons, zombies, global thermonuclear wars, spaceships and volcanoes, animals and plants extinctions, unknown viruses, giant lizards, and alien jellies, planetary clashes and black holes, Frieza, Majin Buu, and the end of the discounts on the Apple Store. Today, we are talking about the apocalypse. In short, the ultimate catastrophe, the total disaster. This is the end, my only frenzy. Or maybe not. Welcome to a new episode of Vivat Theologia, the new name of the series you already love. In everyday language, apocalypse is a synonym of catastrophe, but the word actually comes from the Greek apocalypsis, meaning revelation or unveiling. From the earliest Christian communities, the apocalyptic genre was meant to bring hope and courage to believers under trial. The book of Revelation, in Greek, Apocalypsis, in Latin Vulgata Apocalypsis Ioannis, was born in a time when Christian communities were under pressure and persecution. It does not announce ruin, but opens the curtain to show that beyond destruction there is not nothingness, but Christ, the Lord. It gives meaning to the struggle of the individual, of communities, and history itself. The opening of the book makes it clear. It speaks of the revelation of Christ, a revelation marking the passage from the old world to the new world of justice, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show to his servant the things that must soon take place. The book begins like this. I, John, your brother, was on the island called Patmos because of the word of God. But who is this John? The Greek of the revelation is rough, shouted, punk, while the Gospel of John the Apostle is harmonious. So while the tradition identifies him with the beloved disciple, some scholars suggest he was a Christian prophet exiled to Patmos at the end of the first century. An unresolved riddle, and yet, in the uncertainty, the community recognized the strength of the content, hope, and the victory of the Lamb. The author addresses his revelation to 7 churches: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea, each letter carrying specific admonitions for each community. He presents himself as if already a recognized prophet speaking to a whole network of churches. History has seen many apocalyptic texts, some much darker and horror tinged, others filled with calculation and cosmic imagery. The first book of Enoch, an encyclopedia of fallen angels, heavenly calendars, journeys through the dwelling of the stars, fascinating, but more a book of cosmic vision than of hope. Fourth Hesdra was written after the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem in the 70 CE. In it, a prophet argues with God like an angry son with his father, a powerful text, but too bound to a local trauma. The Apocalypse of Peter, 2nd century, portrayed as a theater of tortures, blasphemers hung by their tongues, vain women tied by their hairs, and murderers burned in fire. A manual of punishments, the Visio Pauli, the Apocalypse of Paul, not the Apostle, 4th century. One of the most widespread texts in the Middle Ages describe a guided tour of the afterlife with angelic escorts, river of fires, and heavenly gardens. An imagery that will later inspire the Divine Comedy. The canonization of John Revelation followed a long communal discernment. Text veering into gnosis. Gnosis, what is it? We'll talk about it in another video. Calculations, cosmic fantasies far from the Christological message were excluded from the canon of the Great Church, with some exception. The revelation of John, on the other hand, was received for its semantic openness, capable of speaking to all communities. Every generation could recognize its own empires and its own beasts in it. More than visions, it stages a cosmic drama where evil seems to prevail and then fails, with everything converging on the Lamb, Christ. It conveys a message of resistance and hope in line with Christian values. Despite uncertainty about its author and the competition of other writings, it was already read as authoritative in the 2nd century, was included in the canon by Athanasius in the 367, confirmed by the African Council in between the 393 and 419, and definitely sanctioned for the whole Catholic Church by the Council of Trent in the year 1546. The apocalypse does not spare strong scenes. Seals are broken, and riders and catastrophe emerge. The white rider with bow and cross, insatiable in conquest. Other interpretation of Eternus meaning. The red rider who takes away peace and sheds blood. The black rider with scales waging famine. The pale rider spreading plague and death. An earthquake rends the sky, which rolls down like a scroll. Sun and moon turns black, and the stars falls like fruits shaken by the wind. At the sound of the angel's trumpet, fire, blood, and meteors as large as mountains rain down, staining the sea of red. A falling star named Wormwood poisons the river, and from the abyss comes armored locusts with human faces and women's hair, lion's teeth and scorpion's tail, bringing torment. A beast rises from the sea with 7 heads and 10 horns, its skin covered in blasphemous names. Another beast rises from the earth, appearing as a lamb, deceiving with wonders, yet speaking like a dragon and branding with the number of men. Babylon appears as a prostitute, dressed like a queen in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold and precious stones, holding in her hand a cup full of filth, drunk on the blood of the martyrs, seated on the scarlet beast. Those nightmare scenes have sparked very different readings. Irenaeus in the 2nd century saw in the Four Horsemen figures of the final judgment. Origen interpreted them as passions that devastate the soul, and Augustine read them as stages already present in the history of the church. The beast with 7 heads for the first Christians recalled the Roman Empire with its 7 hills and the emperors worshipped as gods. In the 1500, Luther went so far to identify it with the corrupt papacy. Babylon, the scarlet-dressed prostitute, for the early fathers was Imperial Rome, while in later centuries it was used as an image of other idolatrous powers. Capitalist London for certain Protestant preachers, the totalitarian regimes for the 20th century for other theologians, and Thomas Aquinas instead reminded us that apocalyptic figures must also be read as sign of inner journey, the trials that the soul must pass through. The macabre is not horror decoration. It's a code that age after age shakes us and unmasks violence, corruption, and inner struggle. But why does the apocalypse present us with these gruesome stories? Because only then does the message of hope shine in full contrast. Light is not naive brightness, but victory that has stared terror in the face. The apocalypse is proclaimed in the liturgy to console and encourage the faithful. It announces that the power of evil have already been defeated at the root by Christ. Therefore, no final crisis can ever separate believers from the love of God. Every apocalypse on earth, every crisis can become a moment of truth, a kairos, in which to choose sides. Even in contemporary debates, the believer is called to avoid both naive denial of problems and desperate catastrophism. Instead, one must witness to a critical hope, the trust that drives us to improve the world, to hope against all hopes. It means rejecting fear and discouragement, and yet the word apocalypse keep being used in catastrophic terms, from Black Death to Savonarola's sermons up to today's speeches that read every change as a prelude to ruin. They appeal to Sodom and Gomorrah to stir fear of the difference. But in the gospel, Jesus proclaimed the kingdom as good news of love and welcome, not as a threat. Blood, seals, beasts. Is it really possible that in John's revelation, the greatest joy is announced? We will discover it in the next video. It's just the Apocalypse 2, from cycle to arrow. We will see how out of travail comes hope. So hit the follow button, smash those likes, share everywhere, and don't miss the sequel. And remember, pray strong pilgrims!